The last thing I would say is that what you're all involved in, and I know you come at it from different angles and points, is to me the most uplifting issue that we have before us. A lot of people talk about energy today, and I love the energy issues, but as we see from Japan, it's fraught with problems, and there are really no clear, bright line answers that any of us probably will ever have in the energy area. It doesn't mean we don't need to deal with it, don't need research, don't need activity. We need all of that. We need better government policies. But it's very tough, in my view, to get breakthroughs, to get big things to happen. I also think that your field has three major goals that can be achieved, and I want to just spend a minute on those so that you can kind of see the attraction that I think lies in your area. The obvious first one is that you're great for economics. You create jobs, good jobs, and you create economic growth. And that obviously is the issue of the day. It's always the issue of the day. So you should feel really good about that. The second thing that you have the potential to do is to hold down health care costs. We sure need that. And if you really look at the impact of certainly cures, but even better ways to manage big problems like cancer or diabetes or whatever, you can see the enormous impact that you can have on healthcare costs if, these things can be produced. Finally, I'm fond of telling people the most important thing in our life is our health. I often say to audiences, you could be Bill Gates, but if you lose your health, the money doesn't mean a darn thing. You're in the same place as somebody that has nothing. And I would wind up with a story that got me interested in health. We all have a story. I have a son. I was our first child, born in 1970. In spring of 1972, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer at Children's Hospital in St. Louis. He had a very fast-growing, large rhabdomyosarcoma on his prostate, which is at that moment where you usually didn't find it. It was usually found on striated muscle behind the eye. So the doctors were surprised to find this. But they really didn't feel they had any good way of dealing with it. They felt it was a very aggressive tumor. It had already was the size of a grapefruit in a 2-year-old, and they thought it would metastasize and that there really was no great hope that he could survive, and all of his systems were shutting down because of the pressure he was under. And we couldn't talk to him, and we couldn't even explain what he was going through, but the good ending to the story is that we found our doctors at Barnes found a triple drug chemotherapy at MD Anderson that they thought might work. It was having some success with where the tumor was usually found. And that shrunk the tumor. They used max radiation, max chemotherapy without killing him. And then took his bladder out because it had been terribly involved with the tumor, and his prostate, obviously, and hope for the best. Matt is 40 years old today. He went to Duke University, and he works with me every day. So there's an emotional content to this issue that is the most important thing in people's lives. And then, so he had his bladder out, so he has a loop, an intestinal loop for his urine. And his doctor recently told him that loop is, pretty old because you're getting pretty old. And that may not last. And you don't have a lot of intestine left because as part of the radiation is the bottom foot or foot and a half of his bowel was totally ruined. So he had a bowel pull down along with putting in a new loop about when he was 11 years old, Boston. So we've started to worry about how we're going to deal with this. And then in one of the meetings in Kansas City, I meet Tony, and he tells me about what he's doing with bladders, and you know the rest of the story. So we're going to take Matt and see what the great things Tony is doing. It may or may not help him, but that shows you the power of this field. This is big stuff. There's nothing bigger.